Yeah, hi everyone. We have Nikola Tesla Part 3 this evening, and we will wait for more people to come in. In the meantime, I will be inviting Darcel to help us open the room for now and play his music. Thank you.
Hi, Cecile.
Hi, Darcel. Yeah, thanks for coming. Yeah, um,
Sure.
we have we already have part 3 again of Nikola Tesla. It seems as if people cannot stop talking about him, and um, we still have a lot to know about him. So that's why we have this room. So we're waiting for more people to come in, and if possible, may we hear your beautiful music.
Absolutely, absolutely. And nice to see you, Cecile.
Same here, there's yeah.
Okay, Cecile, the mic is yours. Hi, Laura.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, Darcel. And yeah, I would like to greet Laura, who will um, help us moderate today. This is the third time that we have a Tesla room, and we are actually expecting Hansen to be here shortly because he has some important matters to discuss about Tesla. So while we're waiting for him, yeah, I would just like to greet Lara here, who came up.
Yeah, I was wondering, Cecile, what can we discuss in room 3? I mean, I haven't been to the full first 2 rooms, but I know they went long, so yeah, this should be interesting.
Yeah, well, Hansen has some technical discussions, and I have invited down there in the audience Word, who spoke to me yesterday that he previously made the room also about Tesla, which is called the Fallen Angel. So I hope that Word will be coming up here soon, shortly.
Yeah, I invited a few people in the audience as well, so anyone just free to come up. Just it's a informal conversation.
Yeah. So I don't know if Word had heard us. So yeah, I would like to invite him to share with us his previous shares in a room that he did about Tesla.
Hello there.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Long time no see.
Yeah, thanks for visiting us here in Quantum Photonics. We're glad to have you.
Sure. Before we start, now, did you mean Tesla, the company, or the inventor?
We are talking about Nikola Tesla, the inventor.
Okay, then we're off to a good start. All right. Yeah. I did a talk about Tesla in the Seeker's Mind, and it goes about 4 to 5 minutes. I don't know how much time you guys have, and and what part of that discussion that belongs in. But the fallen angel is part of it. The scientist is part of it. The master is part of it. Has a few different parts. It was a lot of fun to write. Yeah.
Yeah, just take it away in however you want to lead the conversation. Anyway, Hansen is not yet here, and this is an open conversation. Actually, I thought that we would be spreading ourselves too thinly if we still do a part 3, but there are still a lot of people who want to share, and even if it's repeated, that should be okay because we would want to give many of the people attending this room some opportunity to speak because as you know with the great achievements of Tesla and how his inventions had affected our lives and will affect our lives in the future, there's so much to talk about. And I could see Hansen already here. Just a minute word. I would just like to greet Hansen. Hi, Hansen.
Hey, Suzuo, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm so glad my eyes lit up immediately when I saw you because I'm excited about what you're going to share with us about Tesla. In the meantime, I want to introduce you here to Word, who also did a room on Tesla, which was called The Fallen Angel. And we hope, that he would be able to share with us what he shared in his previous rooms about Tesla as well, because it seems as if the conversation of Tesla about Nikolai Tesla would, is almost unending. And in the past, there were many people who came in our rooms at the later part of the conversation, and they had so much to share. And I think today, this part 3, which I thought that we would have spread ourselves too thinly, is very special because Hansen here will also be discussing about some in his he researched a bit about Tesla and he made some findings about it. So in the meantime, if you would still like to, are you ready to have an opening statement, Hansen, now, or should I give the mic to Word first for a short while to give us a backgrounder, and then after that we will talk about the what we intended to hear from you also today.
Yeah, so I don't know. You can decide. What I wanted to say was a continuation of the first part. There were some questions regarding during the discussion. There was some questions about the exact the principle of the Tesla used to construct this electric tower. I forgot the name of the tower. Basically, to transmit power around the Earth, and then and then also there was a question about how much Tesla knew about the Maxwell's theory of electromagnetism, electrodynamics, especially his equation of his namesake. I just want to address those issues. And do you? I mean, I can go right in into dive right into those issues, and or I can wait for a while.
Yeah, maybe we can just go in if it's okay with you, Word, also, if you have time. The name of the tower is Warden Cliff Tower, also known as the Tesla Tower, um, which was an early experimental wireless transmission station designed and built by Nikola Tesla on Long Island in 1901 and 1902. Yeah, that's the name of the tower. So, I think I will decide that we will share the discussion that you have, because there was long conversation about this earlier, and we had to settle this particular issue, and I'm very excited and really, really eager to hear from you, Hansen.
Okay, so so basically, last time the Rajeshi brought up the Tesla Tower, and so I was really curious about what the principle was, what he was he intended to do, and actually it gels naturally. Excuse me. It gelled naturally into the second issue, because they are actually the same part of the same principle. And so basically, I think the Tesla. There were questions last time about how, when, or whether and when, if so, whether Tesla knew about the Maxwell's equation and theory thereof, and if he did, to what extent he understood the theory and how he applied it. So basically, I don't have the exact timing. I think it's Maxwell discovered his equation in I think 78 or something, close to 80, I think. And then Tesla was born right around that time. And so 20 years or so later, 1900 or so, Tesla invented his Tesla coil and all that stuff. And so it stands to reason, or it stands to surmise that he knew about the theory. And I think there was some kind of debate last time as to whether he knew about that. But so I went to check down the historical accounts. So apparently he did. He read about it in the library, about the Maxwell's equation. But it seems that Tesla wasn't particularly his engineering geniuses and notwithstanding, did not quite understand the equations and the theory of the Maxwell's equations. And actually, he later, when Hertz, Heinrich Hertz, I forgot his first name. Hertz invented his coil, and actually discovered the sparks induced by the oscillatory coils, and one in a oscillatory coils far away, and proved the radiation and electromagnetic wave predicted by Maxwell's equation. The Tesla read about it and then actually went to Europe and visited Hertz. But they actually Tesla didn't quite understand, and then their conversation didn't end on very pleasant notes, and but because of Tesla's engineering genius, he actually invented a better coil, and was able to produce the electromagnetic, the potential, oscillatory potential, alternating current and oscillating potential with much higher frequency than Hertz produced, and he could use his device, newly invented device, high frequency oscillator, to produce the phenomena that could not be realized by Hertz coil. But still, he didn't have the correct understanding of the phenomena. He had his own interpretation, and then so that's precisely why when Tesla visited Hertz and they discussed the phenomena, Hertz was exacerbated, and probably Tesla couldn't explain his idea, and then they couldn't convince each other either. And then and then now that leads to the Tesla Tower. That led to the Tesla Tower. The Tesla had the understanding that the electricity can only be formed by forming a closed circuit, and that's why he was trying to, because last time I had a very hard time understanding what Rajeshi was trying to convey, what the exactly what Tesla was trying to do, and Rajeshi was telling me that Tesla was trying to pump the electric current into the ground, and I was trying to understand exactly, and then I was surmising whether he was doing an oscillatory and then generate basically an antenna, letting the radiation, but I couldn't understand why he wanted to pump it into the ground, and then having the tower, constructed the tower, and I was because I was trying to understand from the point of view, the radiation, which is derived from the Maxwell's equation. So I mean, the reason why I had a hard time and then comprehending it was precisely because Tesla had a misunderstanding of the Maxwell's equation, and he thought that the electric power can only be generated and transported by having a closed loop, a closed circuit. And ironically, there was a guy last time. Hey, Rajeshi is here right now. And so, ironically, there was a guy who, like last time, I remember, popped onto the stage and saying that we all had a misunderstanding of electricity, and then he was saying that basically accused and quote unquote of us of misunderstanding electricity, that we only thought the electricity can only be generated by having a closed loop, but not the well, he called it EMF, but that's not completely. I mean, he said it from a kind of engineering point of view, but it's not completely right. It's actually the radiation, and then but you can derive it from the Maxwell's equation. But I thought I was talking about radiation because I was trying to understand the accounts, by Rajeshi of Tesla's tower, and I had never thought of having a closed loop. But apparently, by coincidence, he thought we interpreted it as the electricity can only be generated by a closed loop. And I just thought I just said I never said that and never thought of it that way, but in fact actually Tesla thought that way, and so that's why he constructed this high tower, and I was trying and pumping the electricity into the ground, and then he thought the stratosphere or the atmosphere, top layer atmosphere, will form a conductor, a conducting layer, and actually will transmit the electricity. Electron. Actually, electricity is a vague word. What do you mean by electricity, right? So, but he actually means that the upper atmosphere will conduct. Will transport electrons, and then whatever you send out, the electron will come back around either from the ground, and then out from the ground, through the ground, and then up to the atmosphere and come back into the tower. And but that's a misunderstanding of electricity. That explains the issue here, and had he actually constructed the tower, it wouldn't. There could be. It could work because it will not work according to his understanding of the theory, but there is some other phenomena that may generate with the tower. There could be we call it the surface wave that is basically a radiation, which is an electromagnetic wave that propagate along, not propagate along, but reflected or diffracted by the ground because of the conduction of the ground. And so the wave can the ground can act as a wave guide, and then the wave electricity can then go along the ground wave. Can propagate along the ground and close to the ground, let's say, but the energy is actually not going like close to the ground. So basically, this is called kids. Wait a second, let me check. I forgot the nomenclature. Anyway,
I pinned a link on the tower for everyone in the room. They can take a look at the tower.
Yeah, you can look at the tower. But the thing is, okay, so there could be using the particular kind of phenomena, using ground acting as a wave guide. You can transmit the electromagnetic wave along close to the ground, but not the way that Tesla envisioned. Despite that, Tesla invented the high frequency oscillator that actually opened up the engineering application of electromagnetic wave, and then also the motors and generators, electric generators and electric motors. But as far as the two issues are concerned, whether he was aware of Maxwell's theory? The answer was yes, and the answer is yes, and but also he's not actually. He wasn't completely. He didn't completely comprehend the theory, and so it engendered his misunderstanding of some aspects of the theory and then its ramification. And I suppose, I mean, it's only with his genius and this acumen, I suppose after he have constructed. Actually, if he had the finance and constructed a tower, he would have realized his understanding was mistaken, and then probably, quickly would change his opinion and then go on some other route that's much more productive. And his track record has proved so. So So by that, with that, I have finished my clarification of those two issues brought over by the first part of the club, the room. Thank you. Cecile, if you want to, yeah.
Well, Darcy, hi, Darcy. Do you want to respond since you guys, I guess, got into a debate last time?
Oh, no, not with Rajeshi. Rajeshi was in the recounting the Tesla's tower, and then I was having the asking him questions about the exact principle the tower is constructed upon. The debate was with what's his name? Benjamin, with Benjamin, and then so he was of the opinion that Tesla was not aware of the Maxwell's equation, and he went about basically exploring the electromagnetism all by himself. And I kind of raised the issue, and then given the timeline of the two persons, of the two persons, it is very likely that Tesla would have known and then because Tesla was working in the field, it stood to reason, and then that it is very unlikely that Tesla wouldn't have read about the Maxwell's equation, and yeah.
Right. So I was trying to read the Wikipedia article and figure out, they did build the tower, but it just didn't work, the science, or they didn't actually have the money. The money ran out before they completed the full project.
Yeah, well, both. Because first of all, the science. He had a misunderstanding of the science, but then also the money ran out as well. Because J.P. Morgan, was it J.P. Morgan? Kind of to shrank the money supply and a flow of money, the financial support, and then so yeah, it kind of shivered.
It just looks sorry, Richie, go ahead.
The why he pulled the funding is very interesting. At first, Tesla wanted money to build a wireless communication system transcontinental, and of course JP Morgan was very interested in that. But then the first time JP Morgan came to visit him at the tower, he said, no, I can also give free power to everyone in the world. And JP Morgan said, I don't want that. I'm heavily invested in the oil industries, and therefore pulled the funding. About the it wasn't really much of a debate. It was just a heckler who wanted to come up and brag about the one semester of electrical engineering he did, and he thought that he understood electricity, and just wanted to stop the stage mostly. But about the viability of the Wardenclyffe Tower, so back then he was basing it on this work of his name was Marlon Loomis, and a contemporary of Oppenheimer. But the reason, I mean, today we understand the various layers of the atmosphere, and this charged layer of atmosphere, which they're alluding to, which they were hoping that would carry current, is actually the ionosphere. I mean, maybe the ionosphere is more appropriately, ionized and a good conductor of electricity. But that's too high up in the atmosphere to act as as a channel for you to send a power through. But they didn't know that at the time. We hadn't yet classified the strata of the atmosphere. So maybe the theory, the limitation was that, it's a sound theory. It's just that the ionosphere is too high up for it to be practically achieved. But it was very early days. So I'm just defending him for some reason here.
Yeah. Just want to make sure that because, originally, I mean, I had a apparently Tesla had thought that the ionosphere can actually conduct electricity. I mean, electron. Let's say, just to be accurate. I mean, so transport the electron and then will form a closed circuit, and then coming back down to the tower with some like lightning and all that. So that was the part that's kind of a misunderstanding of the theory. So, but I mean,
and
go ahead.
And also, I think the most important part of this theory of his was his belief that you could use the Earth as a resonator, which is quite fantastical. Just the vision of this man to believe that, hey, I can make the entire Earth vibrate at a specific frequency and then use that frequency to send energy from one point of the Earth to another, which, again, not something that physics has fully supported and not something that we've been able to manipulate today, but he did demonstrate it very, very effectively, right? At many many mile distance, he was able to send power to his light bulbs, which isn't much, but he did demonstrate wireless power at a distance that we still haven't matched today. So that was another theory of his, which people still think it's pseudoscience. The fact that the Earth is a resonant cavity and there is a background resonance to it that we can maybe tap into. We don't agree that we can tap into it yet, but there does seem to be a very large significance for biology and for life on Earth. But remains to be seen. Go ahead.
There's some subtlety here because you can have a resonator, you can have a resonance, but not with the closed electron kind of transport current going through the resonator. It's basically the electromagnetic wave that you can have a basically a standing wave. But the standing wave is not the current standing wave. It's the standing wave electromagnetic radiation. This perturbation wave in the field, electromagnetic field, that's basically bouncing back and forth. So you don't need a current to transport the energy, but just the wave, just the radiation. So that's why, I mean, you can have a current going through, and then you have a light bulb, but also you can propagate the energy through and momentum through electromagnetic wave just like a water wave that propagates
like a coupler, Hanson. We just learned about couplers the other day. Is that like a coupler?
When you say coupler, you mean a resonator, like an antenna?
Like you're capturing. You're saying that you don't have to have the current. You could just capture the energy, right? The electric field and transport it like a coupler does.
I'm not sure about the nomenclature, but I think I would say that probably it's a resonator or I mean, basically it's like an antenna. So if you you can have an oscillator acting as an antenna, just like an antenna. I mean, and then it radiates the. I mean, okay, radiation comes from the charge, acceleration of charge. So if you wave a charge in your hand, kind of not in a uniform fashion, you have a radiation. I mean, you have an acceleration, and acceleration generates radiation, and then energy transports by the radiation. And then if you have another device, conductor, and then the radiation kind of resonates with the conductor's kind of intrinsic natural frequency, then it will basically capture the energy, and then it will conduct. I mean, the electricity. I mean, the current or the charge in that conductor will be moved by the field or the radiation field, irradiated from the emanator, and maybe that's what you call a coupler. I mean, yeah. So then that's how you capture the energy. Then can basically through radiation. Yeah. But the two ends, one the irradiator and the receiver, don't need to be connected. The Tesla thought you have to connect it either by wire or by other, like say the conducting layer, ionosphere in the atmosphere, actually transporting the electron and then or slash the current. Yeah.
We covered frequency. What was the term for the frequency? The frequency of an object, like to amplify the frequency of an object. And is it because this idea that he could do that in Earth, it's not really viable because there's so many different materials in Earth? Like if it was one material, if the Earth is made of just one material, you can find the natural resonant frequency and then be able to transmit that way. But because the Earth is made up of so many different materials, it's not viable?
Well, I mean, yeah, it could be. I mean, it is a pure material. Yes, you can. But there's also because if it's composed of many different components, but you can still find I mean, it all depends. If the composition, let's say the Earth is, let's say, depending on, let's say, if it is covered, let's say, if it is covered mostly by water, and or the topsoil is composed of one material, you can have a characteristic, because if the electromagnetic wave does not penetrate, I mean, actually, it is true that, I mean, if you have a good conductor, like water, well, I mean, also whether it's a good conductor or not depends on the wavelength, the frequency. There are some things that not a good conductor under a range of frequency, but it is under a different range of frequency. So it all depends on how you model you can best describe the Earth. But it is actually a little bit easier describing the upper atmosphere because it's more homogeneous, and so it's possible that you can have you can treat the whole Earth as a resonator or a cavity, but it really depends on the details. Yeah.
Can I ask? Sorry, go ahead, Lara.
I was going to say, so you said that his project turned out to be not viable, not just for financing, also for the science. So since then, but you're saying there is some hope in the idea, whatever. So since then, are people still trying to make this idea work in a different form at all?
I don't know. Well, there is but I mean, there is a attempt at transmitting the electricity with the kind of a ground effect, or the ground surface wave, but that is kind of I think some people did some small scale experiment, and actually you can use the ground surface wave to transmit the energy. But the thing is, it's a small scale one, and also it depends on the phenomena that is not that differs from what the Tesla understood it to be. So it's not the conduction of the current, but the transmission of electromagnetic wave radiation. So you don't need the current, but just the wave, the radiation. But because of the ground effect, because of the boundary condition, you can transmit it. It's like a wire. I mean, it is like if your ground is composed of metals, let's say, composed of metals, and then basically it interacts with the electromagnetic wave, and because of this conducting, there's a skin depth, and then most of the electromagnetic wave will be reflected off of the surface, and so the electromagnetic wave travels kind of along in parallel to the ground, and then so it's kind of confined in this range, and then it doesn't dissipate. I mean, it's not dissipate. It doesn't spread out as in like a 3D space, and so so it's concentrated, just like it's acting as if you have a kind of a wire confining. Basically, the wires. The function of wires to constrain the energy, so that
waveguide.
Doesn't. Yes, exactly. Well, okay, so you know the word.
Just learned it in K's room,
exactly.
everything. So yeah.
Okay. Yes, because I'm trying to explain what a waveguide is. Yes, it is a waveguide, and then so basically, your normal wire is a waveguide, and then your fiber optics is a waveguide. So basically, with its namesake, it's guiding the wave and confining the energy within this space bounded by the cable or whatever you have, so that it doesn't dissipate. As opposed to if you just like having a cell phone tower, it propagate and emanate in all directions, and then so the power decreases as 1 over r squared. But if you have a waveguide, it's a long, just cylindrical waveguide, then power doesn't dissipate, except it's absorbed by the material forming the waveguide. But that's if you find a good material, then it doesn't dissipate much. So that's why we construct a waveguide.
Yeah, I would be very interested, Hansen, if you could do a first principle breakdown of what a standing wave, electromagnetic wave might work like, and what we might expect in terms of behavior from it. Like these are the boundary conditions, and therefore this is what we can derive our understanding, and maybe break it down for us mathematically if you have the time.
Well, yeah, it is a bit hard through audio device. It would be so much better if we have a blackboard, a whiteboard, writing the equations, or drawing actually. Writing equations or drawing. So basically, the point is basically you have a boundary condition that the continuity either the continuity of on the interface between two materials, two inhomogeneous materials. If you have a homogeneous material, basically the wave just travels through. But if you have inhomogeneous materials, there is basically what I mean mathematically. There are two views, two viewpoints. If you macroscopically, just basically a boundary condition that comes from the Maxwell's equation again. Of course, and you have a continuity in electric fields, in depending on whether you have a perpendicular to the perpendicular to the interface, surface of the interface, and then a parallel to the interface, so two components. So everything, basically, all the conditions are derived from these boundary conditions. But what it is microscopically, what it is because you have the electrons on the surface, or charge on the surface, that is driven by by the electric field, incoming electric field, magnetic field, differently, because when you cross the boundary of two materials, the charges act differently, and then so then it drives. You have a secondary wave that's driven by generated by the electrons charges at the interface, and then it produces a reflected wave and then transmitted wave, and then the superposition of these waves gives you different actions of behavior of the wave. And then so basically the waveguide, a good waveguide, would be basically the surface charge would cancel the transmitted wave, so different phase, the wave, incoming wave, and then drives the surface charge if it is freely moving, which is a conductor. And then actually the effect is basically canceling the transmission wave, and then but the energy is conserved. So basically, the energy has to go somewhere. It goes in the opposite direction. So that's the reflected wave that we're seeing in the kind of macroscopically. The net effect is generating a reflected wave. So basically, the wave, let's say for example, the wave that goes in the fiber optics, basically it goes in a straight line in the fiber optic core, but then it's totally reflected on the boundary of the fiber optic core and with its skin, and then reflected back again, and then it goes kind of hits the opposite wall and then reflected again. So basically it goes in a zigzag fashion. And then if you be having a close off the other end, this is the kind of open end. If you close off the both end of the cylinder, the wave or photons basically bounce back and forth inside this waveguide or cavity. Then you have a standing wave. Well, but of course, depending on the frequency that the wave is generated. The incoming wave. If it is, the standing wave frequency depends on the shape and the volume of this cavity, and so if you have the right shape, the right frequency with respect to the shape and volume, then you have a standing wave, which is basically it lives in this cavity forever, except of course there's no perpetual motion machine, right? So it will be slowly dissipated and it becomes heat eventually. But but that's the kind of a brief accounting of the phenomena.
Lara, was there a website that you and I think Kay had figured something out, right? For one of his previous sessions, even Hansen was there actually. I think we were doing Maxwell's equations on a blackboard.
Yeah, Kay uses it all the time in his room. So we have rooms, everyone in the audience, Sunday nights, Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. So we invite you to come to our rooms. We go over different scientific concepts, and Kay uses in that room. I don't know. I'm trying to remember. Does anyone know? If anyone knows, can they put it in the chat, maybe in the audience, or come up and let us know? But he uses a really great live whiteboarder. I don't know. It's basically, he puts it as a link at the top of the room. You click on it, and he literally, and everyone just watches. He basically. Oh, actually, I think what he does is just share his computer. That's what he does. He shares his computer. But he has a program he uses on a computer that's like a whiteboard, and he like draws like all the concepts like Hans just talked about. He can just draw, and it's really nice to have the diagrams.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I'll try to.
I pinned it at the top of the room. It's called Screenlip.
But okay, cool, awesome. It's
but I don't know how to use it.
I'm not sure if Hansen wants to go over it now. Yeah, and I also don't want to hog the stage. Maybe Jake also had a question, but yeah, I would be really interested in seeing how it looks mathematically, because I know Hansen is really good at breaking that down. And but anyway, thanks.
Lara, Hansen, and Rishi, why don't we talk to Kay and do this room together with him, at the time, so that we can have a conversation. But Rishi, you have to wake up really early because Kay starts at like 2 hours.
Yeah, Rishi, you would love Kay's room. We do it at 8 because I can't stay up late. But you would love his rooms. We try to get up early one day. So I just want to invite Jake. Jake, did you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say, there was when you started talking about waveguides, there was a lot of similarities to our discussion in Kay's room about waveguides, and a lot of similarities. And we brought up RF transmission in that room as well. So there's a lot of crossover between the optical waveguides and the RF waveguides. And it sounds like what you're describing is a ground plane when you're talking about propagation over the Earth. And I heard someone suggest using the entire Earth as a resonator, but that sounds like it would be impossible because the amount of energy needed to use the entire Earth as a sphere, as a resonator, unless you have like a Death Star or something like that. Thanks.
Part of what's amazing is that the entire Earth is already a resonator. It's already a resonant. It's already doing it. It's just, are we able to recognize what frequencies and potentially manipulate or tap into that is the question. It's because there's no question that it's already a resonant frequency. It's already a cavity that's constantly resonating, both electrically, both magnetically, maybe other frequencies as well. It's just I think we know what range it's in. We know it's approximately this many hertz, the frequencies. We don't know what the variability is. We don't know what are the various compositions that made it average out to that number that we can measure. But so there's no doubt about that. It's just, the question of using it in a useful way is what's fascinating.
I imagine it would be, instead of cycles per second, it would be cycles per minutes or hours or something, right?
So I think there was this thing called the Schumann resonance, it's not something that's widely accepted by science, but he put the frequency of biologically significant electromagnetic radiation of resonance to be at around 7 hertz or 8 hertz. So that's a couple of cycles per second. But yes, about what you're saying, it's very, very possible that there might be some of course, resonances are often overlapping, right? You have overtones. So we very rarely see things which are less than 1 cycle per second, but for something as complex as the Earth, you would very likely find overtones or harmonics at much lower cycles. And this is completely a theory I'm throwing out there, but nothing to back that really. But the thing about resonance is you're going to have multiple harmonics and things like that. So, of course, depending on what you're talking about, you're going. It's very rare to find cycles of less than 1 hertz, but I'm just throwing this theory out there.
Yeah, that's what my question to Hanson was. So he was saying, yeah, you can find, like, I think he was saying, Hanson, like, topsoil, you can find the same consistency, because they were within our room. We were talking about how they build bridges with different materials now, because then it won't have one frequency with the bridge, so we can't like self-destruct the bridge, whatever. So that's my point. Like, there's different types of rocks, different types of like metals in the earth. How do you're saying you just find an overall average for the overall frequency of the earth, but it can't happen, right? Because it doesn't work that way.
Well, I mean, it can. It's just pretty complicated because like you said before, the Earth is consists of many materials, and then you have a different different terrains, shape, and so and also like the previous, I think Jake. Mentioning, so it's yes, and it's very likely that the resonance frequency would be very low, because if you have the because you don't want you don't want this wave to be scattered all over the place by the tiny shape change and material. The homogeneity in the surface of the earth. Thinking of mountains and the tree tops, and whatever you have, and then different weird shape. The mountains, like caves and the opening of the caves and all that stuff. And so it stands to reason that the frequency would be pretty low. But it's possible that, because with the cavity, it can be reflected, and also particularly the ionosphere of the atmosphere is highly conducting, and then so you have a good conductor could be reflected off the wave. Electromagnetic wave can be reflected off those layers, and then so it forms a good candidate for the cavity. But of course, you have to have it's the frequency, that's overall frequency, right? Not only you have to reflect it off the top, but also reflect it at the bottom. So what if you have a different frequency, completely different frequency, top and bottom? You find a frequency that can reflect it off the top, but penetrates on the bottom, and then conversely, you can have a good frequency that well reflected off the ground, but dissipates and then penetrates the top. So yeah.
I'd like to draw a parallel to let's talk about any crystal in the world. Just consider a crystal. Maybe it's made of two different things. So look at how we identify crystals today. Like electron spin and magnetic spin is what we manipulate and measure, right? So if you consider a single atom, it's got an electric and magnetic spin that we can measure. But the second you make, for example, a layer of those atoms or a complex 3D structure like a crystal, you're going to get a very different answer for what your nuclear spin resonances give you, and what your what your electric and magnetic spin resonances are, because it's a more complex structure and the overall spin of the object has changed, and therefore the spin resonance will be different. So even if you chip away a tiny piece of the crystal away, you're going to get a slightly different answer to the nuclear resonance or the electric resonance, depending on what the plane is along which it's operating. So if it's like a shaped like a frisbee,
and I take away a small piece of the center of the frisbee, it might have a different effect than if I take away a small piece towards the edge of the frisbee. Maybe if the uniformity of the shape, maybe if the symmetry is lost, I would get changes in the magnetic resonance and the electric resonance. So there's a lot of factors, right? But you must describe the the magnetic resonance and the electric resonance of that lattice of that crystal as different than the atom itself, than a single atom of that same material. So basically to that same if you take that same concept further, whatever your layer is that you're trying to resonate, whether it's the surface of the earth or the ionosphere or a simple conductor, the materials of that conductor and even the air along the way, right? Even consider the air between those two conductors, like in a Tesla coil. You have two Tesla coils and you have some air between the conductors. Now, what's literally happening is that these two Tesla coils are, because they're built to be the same shape and constitution, they have very similar resonant frequencies. And even if only one of them is powered up, the one that's powered up is going to vibrate and is going to transmit those energies and moments of spin along the air around it, right? It's going to literally cause the air around it to vibrate, and this vibration it causes the air itself to acquire to contort. So one of the properties of resonance is it's not just that if I have the right frequency, it's going to make the metal vibrate, but also everything that is exposed to a frequency tends to become the shape that is most resonant to that frequency. It has this property where it will try to adapt to that frequency. So that's why glass will break if you but anyway, so basically the air is going to try to conform to that frequency, and until it slowly is able to create a path between those two Tesla coils. And then because the frequency that the air is carrying is very close to the resonance frequency of the second Tesla coil, the second Tesla coil quickly responds and begins to channelize that energy and begins to accept that energy which is coming from the air through the air from the first Tesla coil, which means that the second Tesla coil is now also going to be humming very energetically because it's been able to essentially cause a path, a resonant standing wave between the two Tesla coils. So now the air is not at the optimal resonant frequency for power transmission, right? It's such a homogeneous material that it's constantly changing, and we haven't really no one's accounted for the air's resonant frequency. But firstly, there's this natural tendency to for any material to try to vibrate at as close to that resonant frequency as possible to match. Secondly, because these two objects are so attuned to each other in terms of they have very similar resonant frequencies, they are able to sort of bolster each other's efforts, these two Tesla coils, and increase the likelihood of transmission per se, so to speak. And thirdly, it doesn't matter if it's homogeneous. You could even have certain, for example, in the case of air, which is homogeneous, you could have certain gases which are more likely to resonate, which are closer to the resonant frequency that you're using. And those gases will vibrate at that frequency and make transmission more likely. Whereas gases which are less close to the resonant frequency will be less likely to vibrate and will act more as insulators in that case against the passing frequency of vibration. So of course everything matters in these kinds of calculations. The direction of which the gas atom is facing might matter because its resonant frequency might be different along a different direction. So just the the pressure, temperature, everything plays in as a huge factor. But essentially overall, whether it's the earth or the atmosphere, as long as you're using a frequency that maybe is close to one of the predominant materials of the earth or the air, maybe nitrogen or I don't know, iron for some reason if it's very common in the earth. So if you're using a resonant frequency close to these, theoretically these metals or these gases which are predominant will vibrate energetically enough that the ones that are less close to that resonant frequency would have less of a dampening effect, and therefore you might be able to achieve something physically feasible.
Well, in regards to my comment to the resonance of the entire Earth, my point was just that the more mass you have, the lower the frequency. Just like a xylophone, you know, the lower keys, the lower frequency keys are just more massive. They're bigger, and so once you get to the size of the Earth, the frequency is going to be really low.
Well, actually, it is the base frequency. The lowest frequency, ground frequency, is when you have the length increases, and it can will increase decrease the frequency as the size increases. But you can always have a higher frequency, resonant frequency. Yeah. So.
But
So just want to.
If you consider the frequency.
Sorry. Yeah, just want to make sure the distinction here is the. Jake, you were talking about the lowest frequency as opposed to the possible set of frequencies.
Well, I'm just saying the lower keys on a xylophone are bigger than the higher keys. But anyway, I think we're talking about, RF propagation. We're talking about like an electrical ground plane and not necessarily resonance.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, you can have a higher frequency in a large cavity, and actually, I think, right. Anyway, so yeah. But you can have a high frequency in a large drum or something.
So look at the frequency. Sorry, Sasi.
It's okay. Just please continue, and maybe in a short while we can have a little break and allow Word to speak because he's been waiting for some time. Of course, I do not desire to interrupt the very passionate discussion that we have. But please speak up first, Rishi, and continue the conversation. Then in a while, we will have a break to give Word some opportunity to share with us also something about Tesla. So thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say the frequency of the Earth going around the Sun is very low, right? And it's because they're very massive objects. So you do have something there. So the base frequency is lower. The more massive the object is something that I think we can all agree to.
Yeah, so let's go back to the topic later. I don't know if Abyss is already on stage. He raised his hand, and yeah, it's been a long while since we saw Abyss, so I would like to welcome him. I could not see him on stage, can you? Otherwise, we would like to give the mic to Word for a while, and let's go back to the topic, Rishi, later on. So, Word, can I give the mic to you for now? Thank you for waiting patiently.
Sure. Yeah, my topic's going to be pretty different here. I'm a bibliotherapist, so I really believe in mythology. You know, with all great people, there's the historical figure, and there's also the mythological figure. Why do they mythologize people? So they can control people. That's why. And not to say that that's bad, but I hope you guys enjoy this topic. And here we go. Tesla. Who was he? The master. From childhood, I was taught to concentrate much attention on myself, which brought me great suffering. It taught me the immeasurable value of introspection and the preservation of life as well as the means of achievement. Originality thrives in seclusion of outside influences, beating upon us to cripple the creative mind. I fed my thought and learned to control my emotions. Being afraid of my visions as a child, I learned to control them as well, and I cherished and nurtured my enthusiasm. Not being able to solve certain problems at work, I forced myself to think about things in my dreams, developing lucid dreaming, which often brought solutions. The ability to pick what is required at any given moment, this instinct is something that transcends knowledge. So I created what I wanted, a thoughtful and spiritual machine. The scientists. Scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. I call this a half-truth. Life is and will ever remain an equation incapable of solution, but it contains certain known factors. The scientific man does not aim at an immediate result. He does not expect his advanced ideas be readily taken up. His work is like a planter for the future. His duty is to lay the foundation for those to come, to point the way. The prophet. The progressive development of man is vitally dependent on invention. Its ultimate purpose is a complete mastery of mind over the material world, the harnessing of the forces of nature to human needs. A new world must be born that would justify the sacrifices offered by humanity. The new world must be free of exploitation, humiliation, and violence, where intellect, science, and art will serve society and not money. My brain is only a receiver in the universe. There is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and information. I believe Tesla is referring to the Akashic Field or Cosmic Library. This is another reason I believe he was such a proponent of the ether. The day science begins to study non-physical phenomenon, it will make more progress in one decade than all the previous centuries of existence, Tesla said. The universe is more moral than us. We don't know its nature and how to harmonize our lives with it. The gift of mental power comes from God, and we concentrate our minds on that truth. We become in tune with this greater power. If we emotionally tie ourselves to nature, then nature comes to us. After death, a person transforms back into the light. The light particles restore their original state. This is the resurrection, Tesla thought. The fallen angel. When Tesla the hunter was Tesla the hunter who caught the light from the depths of earth, or the warrior who captured fire from heaven? On the fated Prometheus, you stole fire from the gods. Tesla asked, did Zeus not have enough lightning and thunder, and was he damaged so by one favor? Industry will proclaim Tesla as their supreme saint. I proclaim him a fallen angel. This is not an angel who rebelled against God and was cast out of heaven, but a person who's been jaded by life and has not let it destroy their inner beauty or their compassion. They still believe in mankind and will go above and beyond for their friends and family. However, romantic love still eludes them, as they have created walls in their heart that are difficult to breach. There are many fallen angels on earth. Do anything to not forget who you are and why we're here on earth, said Tesla. He wanted to teach individuals to regain consciousness of their own wings. I am simply an angel with no name. I lost my wings in a poker game. And if you guys like that talk, I didn't get to read my talk about Da Vinci last night, so if you have another part 2 of Da Vinci, I would be interested, and I hope that was helpful to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Word. Yeah. Maybe there is something I could say about that metaphor, but later. We will see if we will have a part 2 of the Da Vinci talk last night, because many people also want to speak about that. And thank you so much for your share today. Well, it is undocumented, but I have read some anecdotes about Tesla on the side that, they said that he is able to hear. He is super sensitive to sound. He is able to hear some sound from far away from the usual range that humans would be able to hear. And yeah, I would always equate that based upon science on Dabrowski's overexcitabilities, wherein some of our senses, some people have more sensitive senses than the others, that um, a small stimuli would be able to make them feel differently from other people. And that is very common among, of course, neurodiverse people, but mostly among basically people whom we refer to as geniuses. They see the world with different eyes, and their perceptions are quite different from the mainstream. So yeah, thank you so much for your share. We appreciate that. Anybody who would like to comment on Bird's share, please feel free to unmic. And yeah, I saw Briss and also Joe coming up on stage. And definitely we will talk if we will be having a part two of Leonardo da Vinci as well. So please feel free to comment. In the meantime, I would like to hear from Abyss and Joe, who are here on stage.
What's the reference to the to the passage that was just read, or the name of it, or whatever?
Most of my material there was from an interview. I think it was from like just a general student named John Smith. This seemingly irrelevant thing on YouTube, which I thought was really good. Yeah. I did that talk I did in the Seeker's Mind a few months back, and I've done a lot of talks then, and I can't really remember all the references right now. But back channel me, and I'll see what I can do for you.
Word. Oh, go ahead, sir.
No, please, after you.
Word. So, I got in late to the room. I'll get the replays, but that was incorporated some quotes and materials, but overall, is your own composition? Yes.
Yeah, I prefer to
You're in the Matrix.
I don't know if you guys. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it happens to all of us when they try leaving the company. Yeah, I used to give Dharma talks, so I guess it's something that I'm used to. So I hope you got something out of it.
I just want to say it was excellent. I'm a lifelong Tesla fan. I've been to Wardenclyffe and many Tesla sites, and I'm a patent attorney. I read his patents, read his books, read books about him, and I thought you really did justice, and I recognized the fidelity of some of the quotes and stories they're in, but you wove it in real well with the original material. It's really well done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, that was very enjoyable, and thank you so much for coming up with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For inviting me.
I'm wondering if Abyss will have something to say for now. Maybe some comment about the previous discussion that you had with Rishi and Hansen.
Oh, sure. Hi, Cecile. Hi, everyone. I know I've been gone for a long time. It's great to be back and seeing you all. I was swamped with work, and now I have some few time to spare. But yeah, it's really interesting. Tesla, for me, it's a very fascinating character, and I think it will always be a fascination for generations to come. Not just for his mental acumen, but also his way of thinking, which I think goes with, like, I think Da Vinci was a point of discussion yesterday, who's also another outlier, and I think like Michael Faraday will be another mix to that. But yeah, it's I think it's kind of important to at least like address their contribution in such a way that how they actually change the way we think, and I think Cecile also mentioned that the fact that these people may have been on the spectrum, which comes at his own advantage and disadvantage. Obviously, the fact that they are able to engage in creative abilities, that's the positive aspect of it, but they're also shunned from society or seen as this sort of like incomprehensible person because of their sheer intellect. So we'll always try to kind of overlook that. So, but yeah, I think like this kind of merits a whole new discussion, given the fact that we know about neurodivergence and how to sort of how to go around and discussing it. But yeah, for the most part, I'll be listening. But thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was a little bit busy earlier, but I just want to say the word, your composition earlier was very poetic. I thought it was a poem you wrote.
Thank you. Yeah, I do. I'm also a poet, and I do healing poetry. So I have a room on Clubhouse actually in Poetry Bandits, and it's about the healing power of words. For instance, Mother's Day, I did a talk about the mother wound, and Father's Day, I'll be talking about Iron John by Robert Bly about the father wound, and so for me, kind of, mythology is my thing. That's what gets me going, and I try and weave that into all the greats like Tesla. So thank you, I appreciate it.
I think it was interesting that it sounded like he had a slight disdain for the math of the science, but I don't know. I mean, so that's basically, and Hansen is a theoretical physicist, which is based on math, right? So it's like he's basically saying, just be an experimentalist. Forget about the math for a minute, because the math might be too limiting. That's what he's basically. But the math can also lead to so much discovery, like Maxwell's equations, which Hansen was saying earlier, he didn't really fully understand, and that's what kind of limited his discovery in certain ways. So it's like it's like a balancing act.
Yeah, he was mainly an engineer, but and just an extremely gifted person who had these whole visions of he would have these whole visions. Imagine being a child and having these just inventions, seeing them before your eyes, and they actually disturbed him, as you can imagine. Sorry, those are the turkeys in my backyard. So you can imagine he had to deal with that from a young age.
Yeah, and also, he's an engineer, and also Faraday's was like that too. Faraday didn't know any math actually, and he was, I think he was kind of self-taught man, and he discovered many of the principles of electromagnetism, and like the the magnetic field, and his way of visualizing the magnetic field, the field line, and many other phenomena, and then was beautifully summarized by Maxwell with his equations.
Yeah, I actually, Hansen, coincidence, I actually wanted to dive deeper into Michael Faraday. And of course, the very well formally educated scientists now would go to the Royal Society and Royal Institute, and they would always recall that was the table that Michael Faraday would conduct his lectures to all the other trained scientists, and that his theories were very well respected. So I could imagine, like what Word was saying here. For instance, maybe looking at the prodigies because, as you know, um, Tesla is also a polyglot. He spoke so many languages, and during his childhood, it was accounted for that he had an eidetic memory as well. And of course, as you say, he would say that some of the ideas that he had during his teenager adult times came from some kind of dream or some kind of revelation to him by something, just like what was happening with Ramanujan, who also said that the formula that he did in the past and what he wrote in his notebook was came from some dreams. And of course, if you will remember, also the Kikoli dream, and like the periodic table of elements that we have. So it could be accounted for just like in something very mystic, or it could be accounted for in a different mind, a different way that they try to think. So that's why when you have people who are considered geniuses or in the gifted spectrum, there is always a question of uh, dual diagnosis or misdiagnosis based on that. But as I would say, maybe as children, if they have a different way of looking or processing the information that we have in the world, so just imagine what kind of world you would have that you would not be able to express yourself or be understood by other people in the mainstream. So that's the painful part, of growing up like that. But yeah, we still do not understand how this is being processed and how they are able to come up with some ideas that would uh, be changing the world and would affect us maybe even 100 years later.
I'm glad he brought up Ramanujan because, he had to struggle as an immigrant. I mean, going against these big business titans, being an immigrant certainly didn't help, Tesla's chances. And Ramanujan, it was really difficult him going to Cambridge, and but he wanted to get all that stuff out of his head before he died, and one thing I like about Ramanujan was that all his breakthrough work was written with crayon on the floor of his Hindu temple, praying to his Hindu goddess to put numbers on my tongue. So he made his life's work a spiritual practice, which is what I want to do. Having seen that movie, The Man Who Knew Infinity, Monkey See, Monkey Do. I don't want wordsmiths' ability as an artist. I want God's ability as an artist, which gets into another talk I did on sacred contracts. God's like is no dummy. He's like, okay, I'll give you that ability, but you got to do God's work, and you got to do it for humanity and do it for Jesus's commandment that very few people could do, which is to love and help your neighbor. And so I think that really, 100 years later, we're using Ramanujan's math to figure out black holes, still. And so I think that really did well for him, and I think it really did well for humanity. Thank you for bringing him up. You should do a talk on him, definitely.
Yeah, we had the previous room on Ramanujan too, but it would be very helpful if we could do another room at some point in time because people had a lot to share about that. So yeah, um, I see Carla on stage also here, and yeah, later on, if Hansen and Rishi, to whom we dedicated this room also for this part, we would still want to, yeah, bring up something to reset the room. I would really welcome that because they were able to give rise to some thought processing and some research, historical research about the room one that we had before. So that's why we had this room three. So yeah, in the meantime, Carla is here on stage, and would you like to ask or some questions or make any comment, Carla?
Yeah, I put it in the chat, but I was just wondering if anyone knew more about Tesla's mom, because he credited her with his inventive nature, and she would, I guess, create inventions for their farm, and that's super cool. But I just love that he gave some credit to his mom, and I just wondered if anyone knew any more about that.
You just say something about the mom of Tesla?
Yes, I don't know. This is Joe, and I heard Carla clearly. Maybe the audio isn't as good, and I'm chagrined. I fancy myself to know a good deal about Tesla, and maybe I do a fair amount, but I only know enough to know that what Carla said is very true, and I have some vague recollections of him emphatically praising his mother and crediting his mother for things. But I don't know that there's much more than that. Those comments, there may be. I just don't know that. I do know that in whatever it's called now, Yugoslavia or whatever, forgive me, geopolitical term is applied there now, that there is a Tesla museum in Eastern Europe, and that would be something to see too. Cecile, maybe you can organize a field trip, charter a jet or something. We'll hop in.
Serbia.
Thank you.
Yeah. Actually, there are historical accounts about that because the mom of Tesla was not formally schooled, and yet what they had said so far in their accounts was that his mom had an eidetic memory, and Tesla himself tries to attribute his eidetic memory to his mom. So, do we know how is it like to have an eidetic memory? Well, maybe I know some people who have eidetic memories. I know someone who in his Montessori school was once punished, and he would be asked to go into the library, maybe for asking questions which are out of bounds. And little did they know that he really enjoyed to go into the library and read all the encyclopedia there because he has an eidetic memory. And it's both fascinating and it's also a curse at the same time to have that. So also, just a few hours ago, we had a researcher who was discussing about video games. Video games and the digital media and its effects to the intelligence. And he was at the same time trying to study polygenic scoring and the effect of genetics and the environment as regards to a person's makeup. And of course, we could not deny that out of nowhere comes, sometimes some genius in our studies about people who are prodigies or people whose parents are just like, non-achievers, the way we look at it in the mainstream. They would sprout out somebody who is really a genius and would make a mind-blowing idea which could change the world. So if we try to look at in their lineage, of course there's a great contribution of heredity about that. And but of course another pushback in the condition is that recently we also had a guest from Columbia University whose research was about poverty and being victimized at a young age and how it could push back IQ to several points. However, if we talk about these people that we have here, even Einstein and Tesla and even Ramanujan, especially Ramanujan, who had suffered so much because of his poverty and even the discrimination that he had because he looked so different from the people who were with him when he went to UK. They were able to go beyond much. Just imagine if they were born privileged. So that's another story. So back to the comment about his mom. Well, I think, it's true about his mom on their village. And I think there's still a lot that we have to study about Tesla that we have to discover. So, yeah.
I feel like it would be perhaps a really interesting thing to study, which is comparing the types of inventions by gender. It just crossed my mind, but I'm really curious if, as a heavy influence being his mother, and I don't think many male inventors would say the same. I'm thrown out there. But it's just curious to me because he didn't seem to relate very well to, other scientists, because he seemed very much different. And I'm just wondering if that difference is kind of the source of his influence. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, Carla, I would like to address that also immediately because, of course, family is a very important influence, and heritability is also a very important influence. But when you try to gauge giftedness based upon the experts, a 10-point difference in IQ would mean a lot on how you perceive the world. Because even in giftedness, there is what you call a moderately gifted, highly gifted, and profoundly gifted. So there is a big difference on how people are able to react to the mainstream when they are in this state of gift that they have. So moderately gifted is still just okay, and maybe it would be good. They could like conform to the demands of the society. Even like, for example, we have an educational system that fits you into these boxes. Maybe they will compromise to fit into such box because they need to have grit as well in order to survive and to be able to achieve. Maybe they would be number one in their class all the way. But those who come above that level, especially those who are profoundly gifted, has a very, very difficult time to adjust to what is the so-called mainstream and the standards of the traditional education that we have. That's why you will see that people even like Einstein would be out of that system, and just like Tesla himself, he was not able to graduate for any formal course that he had. He had to drop out of the system because, he has a difficulty in trying to communicate. Even with his professors, in fact, and he sees the world with different eyes. So, yeah, this is the study that's been there for the differences even in IQ. Even if I would say that IQ is not the only gauge of giftedness, especially now. So, but there's a huge difference in that. So, thanks for your share.
Tesla pretty much gambled away his tuition and was able to pay his parents back. So he had some other things going on when he was in school, but he bounced back from that.
This is Joe. I hadn't heard about the gambling. I know that many prominent mathematicians have fallen prey to that. They think they got a system like somebody in an old movie. But I didn't know that. Anyone else hear that about Tesla, or what did you hear? Whoever spoke last. Thank you.
Yeah, at some point in time, I read that he had some kind of gambling addiction, but he was able to correct that later. So, but we don't know what went in his mind when he was actually doing that. If you remember, even during the time, I don't know if it was there was a group about MIT people who would do card counting because they know the math behind it and they could just see the numbers, and yeah, I think there was even a film about that. So at the time when you talk about the physics of Wall Street, when after they had this Manhattan Project, because the physicists no longer had when Manhattan Project was finished, the physicists no longer had many jobs and they're not as romanticized as before, so they went into the physics of Wall Street. And so when they were doing that, they also were realizing that, because they could predict what's going to happen based upon card counting. So there was a group from MIT who tried to do card counting first, not just to make money, but, just to challenge the system that the casino had. So that was their reinforcement on why they were doing that. Later on, of course, they had a lot of money, but we still don't know what was the reinforcement, that whether positive or negative reinforcement that Tesla had while he was doing that gambling. So it's also possible that I know a lot of people who are really really so bright that they would also be going into drug addiction because it there is something that they could not explain about themselves. Of course, in the end, I saw people trying to recover from that, but they said that Tesla, I think, was doing gambling while he was still in Serbia. So, no, not there, but he was working somewhere in Europe. But when he went to the U.S., he recovered from that addiction. But I'm not sure. So anyway, yeah, Bird, you're about to say something?
You're right. It was a short-lived thing, luckily for him. And you mentioned him, finding it difficult to talk to people. I think with that intellect, it would, who can you relate to? And I think, this was literally a mad scientist that you read about in comic books. I mean, he created a death ray machine. He created an earthquake machine that almost brought down his building until he had to, destroy it himself. I think that would definitely get him on the FBI's attention. And I think it's very possible that they stonewalled him, and was maybe one of the reasons why he was living in a hotel room the last 10 years of his life. And what were they supposed to do? I mean, this guy was really out there, was really just incredible. I mean, he was like, imagine like Da Vinci, like doing his thing last century. It must have been really incredible to watch. I mean, literally the master of lightning. And you guys talked about the stuff that he did in the Rockies and putting electricity in the ground, the Tesla coil. We still don't know. We still can't reenact those experiments. We still don't know how he did it. And so that's why there's Tesla, the historical figure, and with every great person, and then there's the mythology, which I think is interesting. History always tends to be more interesting, but very few know that. Only the privileged few.
The MIT project team movie is called 21, and the documentary is called Breaking Vegas.
Yeah, I saw that documentary as well. It was great. The reason he ended up in the hotel is because he ran out of money, right? And what I couldn't understand is he had that deal, the royalty deal with Westinghouse, and I don't know if it's been discussed in the other rooms, but he basically gave up the royalty, tore up the contract to help Westinghouse get through the crash of 1929, I think. Why did he do, does anyone know the full story about that? Because that seems insane.
I think part of it was his brother-in-law, if I'm not wrong. I think Westinghouse was his brother-in-law. Oh, no, sorry, he wasn't married.
No, I wasn't his brother-in-law.
No, I'm mixing that.
I know the full story if you want to hear it.
Please, Joe.
Oh, okay, Laura. Yeah, here's the story. Of course, we know that he did the three-phase AC generators, and and with Westinghouse, he harnessed the power of Niagara Falls. The contracts he had with Westinghouse specified, so much money for so many kilowatts and so on. They were done before everything was completed. Well, in a few short years, they had so many dynamos up at Niagara Falls, they were generating massive amounts of electricity. George Westinghouse went to Nikola Tesla and said, I don't know what to do. I literally have to pay you more than all the money in the world. It was just preposterous. Tesla said something to the effect like, well, George, I know you've always been my friend, and it will be fair to me. It breaks my heart. He should have had a lawyer with him at the time renegotiate the rate. But he did, in fact, literally, like Laura said, tear up the contracts, the licenses he had at Westinghouse, blew Westinghouse's mind. For the rest of his life, George Westinghouse, head of that company, anything Tesla wanted, he'd give it to him. He'd call him up, he'd ask him for anything. A dynamo, give it to him. A locomotive, give it to him. They wouldn't even ask him what it was for. Anything he wanted would George Westinghouse give to him. But he had no contract. And when George Westinghouse died, as all people do, Tesla tried to ask Westinghouse Corporation for something, and they were like, we don't owe you anything, buddy. And that's what happened. So he got nothing.
Oh, that's sad. He should have thought of it and left him something in his will then.
Well, this wasn't.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, Laura. It would be something that would be interesting. I never read any biographies of George Westinghouse, except I know that he always did right by Tesla. And it was standing orders that give him anything he wants. And but yeah, they didn't, solidify it. Excuse me, I cut somebody off. Please go.
This was not a man who had avarice. I don't think he had 1 ounce of avarice in him. He wasn't motivated by money. He wanted to make mankind better, and so he was obviously not a businessman. Didn't want to be a businessman like Edison, Westinghouse. Edison was an engineer and a businessman. That's a rare combination. Like Tesla today, like Elon Musk. But yeah, I mean, back then when he tore up that check was something like $1.5 million, and he did it because it was his friend.
I have a very serious question. Do you think Tesla had a messy desk or a clean desk?
I think he had a clean desk.
I say messy.
I say messy also, maybe.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with messy as well.
If I had a messy desk, I would prefer to live in a hotel because at least you get free housekeeping.
And his desk looks clean as it could get. It looks simple. If you just Google Nikola Tesla's desk, it looks like one of those like old school small desks, IBM, very much like everything's tucked away, very much like an engineer. So, surprising.
Huh. Do people want to know about how he got to the hotel and how that happened?
I know he fell in love with a penguin, but I don't know how he ended up in the hotel.
It was a pigeon.
Pigeon. Penguin, sorry, pigeon, yeah.
Yeah, anyway, I wonder if Abyss we could hear Abyss now. He wanted to say something earlier, but he had the faint sound, so I would just like to test if we can hear Abyss.
Oh, hey, Cecile. Yeah.
Great.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry. Yeah, I hope I'm more audible now.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just kind of like addressing as to why I was missing from the platform, the fact that I was busy the past few weeks. But try to be regular, although probably not as I used to. But I was appreciating the conversation, and I was trying to weigh on what Jershi and Hansen were talking about when it comes to I think Tesla coils, which has something to do with ionization of the air. But I think we've probably moved far from that discussion right now. But yeah, I will try to jump in if I have any opinions. But yeah, thanks for giving me the chance, Mr. Seal.
So just in the hotel.
Say again, audio broke.
So what is the story about how he ended up in the hotel?
It's rather mundane, but I'm pretty sure this is how it went down. For years, he had lived in the most splendor at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, which was one of the most luxurious and most prestigious hotels in New York. But he did have unpaid bills. But they knew he was a genius, and from time to time, I believe he would pay, lumps of bills. So they carried him for a long time until they could no more. And then he went to the Hotel New Yorker, which was a nondescript hotel, at least it is today. It's still there. It's right near Madison Square Garden, Penn Station. And it's there that he passed away. There's a plaque outside that, and I have a picture of it if anyone needs it, but that's where he passed away. And I think he had a pretty good tab going there too. But so that's all. He lived in hotels, and very simple. As someone said, there's room service and so on. I think he just wanted to focus on his things. It's really kind of beautiful. If a person wants to, I do want to. I'd like to someday. You can go to the New Yorker Hotel and stay in the room he lived in.
So I would like to sort of engage in this kind of like a Gadonka experiment, if you will, and not just an experiment, but sort of like a thought process. If if you can indulge me in some kind of anachronism, if Tesla were to be born, probably like if he were to be alive today, given that he was born probably in the 80s, 90s, I'm kind of wondering like what kind of profession would he go for? I don't know if the inventiveness that he has, at least like when it comes to when discovering alternative current, may have been like in place, assuming that that already happened. I'm just curious, like what you guys think that he would be involved in if he were to be born in the last 3 decades or so.
This is Joe Abyss. That's an interesting question, but as you point out, embedded in it is the assumption that alternating current was developed by somebody else and so on. And I think it's hard to answer because, I mean, truly more than anyone else I can think of, the world would be a completely different place if Nikola Tesla had not lived when he did and done what he did. It's an intriguing question. Like, if he dropped in on the scene today, would probably take us to some new height, but probably is unimaginable leap forward as what he did was. What do you think? What does everyone think?
Yeah, so the reason why I'm asking is because I think, those geniuses that actually lived before any of us here were born, that have been sort of ascended to mythology, as Ward put it, are products of their time. So in a way, that if that's why I asked, like if Tesla were to be alive today, you'd probably be more interested in what's currently trending and probably make a huge dent in the current trends of science and tech. So that's why I kind of posited that question, given his caliber and his potential. I was wondering like what people would think that his input would be highly appreciated if he were to be alive today, if that makes sense.
Well, I think this is one of the best times in humanity to be alive. So he would be doing so much with AI, and I don't know. I just think he'd be so excited about the future, be doing so much.
Yeah, that would be my first guess as well. I think he'll probably be doing more AI work. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of entertain other opinions if people have any other thoughts on that.
Wasn't he delving into the spiritual realm towards the end of his life? Is that what I'm hearing correct?
So, Tesla subscribed to this theory of, as described in the Upanishads, about the Akashic records, and how the aether is this all-pervasive material which pervades across the universe and forms sort of background boundary through which all, for example, ideas are supposed to be transmitted through the Akashic records, and so you could say that it's the boundary of creativity, not boundary, but the backdrop of creativity, and there's a lot of esoteric concepts around that which I don't really understand, but these are like westernizations of the old Indian concepts, the Akashic records and things like that. But
Sorry,
he was
what are those records? I don't know what those are.
So the westernization of the concept of karma was that everything that everyone does is stored in the ether as a record, and that's the purpose of existence, to accumulate experiences and store it in these records, and that these are what you're judged on based on this. You're judged for your entry into heaven or hell, or basically, depending on these records, you either experience the world as either heaven or hell because of your memories of what you've done on your during your time here, and that all thoughts and expressions are transmitted through the ether, which is this substance that is similar to vacuum of space, but is essentially 0 point energy. Or I'm sorry, I'm trailing off a bit here, but I'm not too familiar with the westernized version of the concept. But Tesla held a lot of stock in it, and he studied this quite extensively, and he wrote about this in his diary, and many of the speeches that he gave, he'd mentioned this, especially during the later years of his life when he was in isolation most. But I'm sure that Joe knows more about this.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I think
No, you know a lot. I don't know anything about Akashic Records, and it's very interesting to hear you say. I just think everybody here knows little pieces, and that's what makes these rooms great.
Maybe when he was talking about ether, he was referring to what we call today dark energy.
Now there's an idea, it very well could be. That just strikes me as rings true.
Well, I imagine that if that was his trajectory, that he would have been the person to prove, to like physically prove some of the things that we negate about spirituality, but he would have been able to prove that in a physical manifestation. That's what I think.
So I'm curious if this can be intimated to what Jershi was saying. There's been thought that maybe there is some kind of luminiferous ether that actually carries photons throughout the universe, and I think the famous Michelson-Morley experiment, which was proposed or conducted in order to prove or disprove this idea, is one of the most highly quoted things or experiments in physics. So is that what you're referring to, at least like from scientific and Western kind of approach?
Sorry, you faded out a little bit. I'm on the 99 in Bakersfield.
Oh, was I not audible? I can repeat the question if
yes, please.
People didn't hear me. Yeah, I guess like I was asking if it's fair to intimate the ether perception or the ether concept that Rishi was mentioning with the luminiferous ether that was proposed in the famous Michelson-Morley experiment.
I'm not really familiar, so I can't say. Sorry.
I just make it very clear that this philosophy, this Eastern philosophy, spoke about. It's very old, and it talks about how there are 5 elements: fire, water, air, earth, and ether, or space, or sky. And we've been trying to sort of bring that into modern physics, like equate that to modern physics. But one of the important things that I understood about this philosophy was that it's not a physical element. It's not like fire is fire. Different things can take on the nature of fire by having the properties that we associate with fire, which are expanding radially outwards. Like whereas and it's more it's less grounded. It's less not grounded, but it's less dense, right? So the density is maximum towards earth, and then water, and then and then fire, and then air, and then space. So space is the least density. So what is the least dense thing that we can think of? And right now we're discovering that vacuum, and that vacuum is really not empty. There's so much to it, and it's a really densely packed substance, right? And so the way we used to describe elements and materials and anything really is by saying that it's, for example, if I was to take a drop of water, I could say it's 100% water. I could say 90% water, 10% air. Or when it's ionized water, I would say it's 50% water, 50% space. And therefore describe it through these elements, right? The properties of this material, I describe them through the elements. So when they're saying something is akashic or something is more space-like, they're describing it to be very sparse and not dense. And with certain properties, right, which I don't fully understand. They're very well described, but they're very esoterically described, and therefore I don't understand them very well. But the closest thing that I could think of that comes close to, like, here's what we meant by Akasha, and here's what modern physics describes and understands today would be vacuum and 0-point energy. So the Akashic record then is that there's this what we describe today as a cosmic microwave background wave radiation that permeates throughout vacuum, right? It's a universal a vibration that permeates throughout the universe. And this vibration does tell us a message. In fact, all of our, the theory for the origin of the texts that the Hindus study is not passed on to the word of God from an angel to a prophet like some Abrahamic religions. But the theory is that this Akashic record, this cosmic microwave background radiation, if any one of us were to go to the top of, say, a mountain or just a really silent place and just listen to that sound and just listen and decode and interpret it and understand it completely, you would unlock all the secrets of the universe. And that everything that's ever happened or will happen or can happen is all stored in this microwave background radiation, which is essentially the sound that created the universe and permeates it even today. And by totally deciphering this sound and all the things that having this background radiation tells us, right? It tells us the age of the universe. It tells us how it all started, why it all started. And if by decoding this, we're able to unlock the mystery of the universe. And this is supposedly the Akashic record, or at least how I understand it. And it's not too much of a stretch scientifically, in my opinion, because we've had theories of how stars that are millions of light years away are actually binary star systems, and we were able to identify them through astrology, through some calculations that we're still not able to replicate today.
Astronomy, not astrology.
Sorry. No, there's a distinction. Astrology is the science of perception of things from the earth.
No, I'm sorry.
Correct,
Objection, hearsay, objection, speculation.
Sorry, Vedic astrology was the ancient science of predicting the effects of the universe on Earth. It's geocentric. It's not about the universe and the structure of the universe, but it's about how the universe affects us here on Earth. So it's completely geocentric. So what is the effect of that binary star system on the Earth? Somehow we're able to calculate that. It seems ridiculous, but I've just seen the theories. I haven't seen too much to prove it, but I have a healthy respect for what seems to be a pseudoscience, but somehow I survived till today. I'm sorry, I'm off on a bit of a tangent, but part of the point was that never mind. I think I've over-explained what Akashic Records is, in my opinion.
I think the CMB is an interesting problem because we see some connection with background radiation and its effect on the ability of some molecules to form. In the same way that we have a Goldilocks region around our star, there's also a Goldilocks region around in our galaxy, in the spiral of our galaxy. And other parameters help configure this, one of them being the background radiation. If the radiation was too large, you wouldn't have anything able to form. If it was too weak, there might not be enough binding energy to make things come together. So it's about having a nice recipe, and recent work showed that radio frequencies and photonic energy can work together to create binding interactions at over 1,000 angstroms apart. So that was kind of fascinating in terms of a somewhat non-local phenomenon, and somewhat supportive of what you're saying, that there is some sort of signal radiation that imparts energy on molecules, and this has some sort of encoding feature and perhaps is somewhat responsible for the emergence of life, at least here on Earth.
I'm sorry. I'll just correct myself there. That's not what I was implying. So so if you consider all of the universe was created if it was considered to be originating from a single point in time, there must be a single vibration that defines the universe at that point in time, and we call this vibration sound. We say that this is a single sound which had all the information required to make the universe as we know it today. All the physical laws, the value of pi, the value of the golden ratio, etc. But a single vibration that represents I was implying. So so if you consider all of the universe was created if it was considered to be originating from a single point in time, there must be a single vibration that defines the universe at that point in time, and we call this vibration sound. We say that this is a single sound which had all the information required to make the universe as we know it today. All the physical laws, the value of pi, the value of the golden ratio, etc. But a single vibration that represents all this information. So this vibration, of course, evolves over time, right? It's interfering with itself and it's evolving over time. But we have an understanding of the representation of that. We might not be able to describe it completely, it's maybe too complex. But just the fact that's what we recognize here. It's not like, no, right now there's a sound that's affecting human life and causing life to exist. No, we're just saying that we just recognize there was this vibration and all of the universe is one vibration or evolved from one vibration. And by understanding that vibration and how it's evolved over time, we can work backwards and understand the entire universe and the physical properties of it. I think that's what I was trying to say. And that is in fact the theory of most of Hindu philosophy.
Yeah, and I was just saying that my modern scientific analogy is in the framework that I presented. It's the most generous way that I can support what you said. I can't necessarily support with the statement about the one frequency. That's seems more dogmatic than empirical.
I'll just try to clarify. It's not like, oh, there's the sacred frequency or a vibration, although there's some of that I've heard, but it's more like all the information all at once, and you have a complete picture, and that complete picture, of course, evolves, but we're just representing that if I were to tweak that vibration slightly, I would get a completely different universe, and therefore the energy signature at the beginning of the universe has some significance, whether it's spiritual or physical. And if the more we're able to understand that initial vibration or understand what made the universe come to being, right, then we would be able to understand the forces that affect us today. And that was the basis behind which people would sit and theorize and make calculations and formulas and theories and put them down in religious texts, not religious texts, but what used to be scientific texts that they would pass on, right? That this is what we understand about the universe based on how we think it evolved from one single vibration, or how it came into being from these causal forces. But I'm trying to bring science into philosophy.
But I see what you're saying. So an organizational frequency. So something that aligns everything else, which is, the physics of the universe, are the same throughout the universe, right? So for me, I guess I'm thinking of it as, I used to go gold panning as a child. I'm not sure if I just got out of the room. I used to go gold panning as a child, and I would see how the sedimentary composition would pile in the pan. And this is how I think of the universe. And so depending on the type of frequency, those elements in the pan are going to organize a specific way based upon the type of frequency that is that they're interacting with. Does this make sense?
It does, but to clarify a little bit more, the theory is that the pan itself and all the elements inside it can all be represented by frequencies, and there's you can say there's one unique energy signature that represents all of the pan and all of the elements inside it at once. right? And maybe it's like something more abstract, like you could look at all the spins and all of the thermodynamic signatures of everything that's on the pan. So what I'm saying is that if the pan was evolving over time, or it started from a single point and then became the pan as we know it today, the concept of Aum is that you can represent not just the starting before the pan came to its current state, but also the future states of the pan, because you're able to represent the energy signature of all of the elements of the pan at once, and how it might evolve, all the Hermitian operators of how the elements on the pan might move. And all of this together is one energy signature or vibration, right? All the information that encodes all of the universe at once is one single waveform, you could say, a very complex waveform with many overlays and many overtunes. But it can be represented as one. So that's sort of.
So
I hope that makes it clear.
A chord instead of a note.
Yes, and the most complex chord of all, one that represents everything that can exist.
I love that.
So it sounds like you're describing. I think it sounds like you're describing the theory of everything, or maybe like the Big Bang, or something like that.
Yeah,
well, I was going to say, didn't the University of Washington recreate the sound of the Big Bang based on the electromagnetic radiation? They have the sound of the Big Bang. Has anyone tried to study it and decipher it?
It sounds like a fart.
Actually, there was no sound at all, actually.
Yeah. It just they project it onto the acoustic range, and so it ends up just sounds like that. So in terms of the mathematics, though, I would use different language to describe what Rajarshi is saying. I would use initial conditions and boundary conditions. The use of frequency singular, I think, is problematic, though. I would say frequencies, energies, properties, and structures. And yeah, that might have some sort of unified form that we could refer to. I really like the idea of Aum as being a set of frequencies that has some sort of fundamental interaction, in the same way that if we were to promote the bonding of certain molecules because of ambient radiation, I think there's some evidence to suggest that combining acoustic and optical phenomenon does show some promise with microwave ablation, for example, which is rather interesting for cancer treatment.
Absolutely. And part of that is so Aum is just a symbol, right? It represents the coming up of the universe. Sorry, the dissolution. What's the opposite of dissolution? The creation of the universe, or the Big Bang. And then U, which is the sustenance of the universe, and which is the dissolution of the universe, or the Big Crunch. And that's the concept, right? We've just built a simple onomatopic representation of how the universe evolves from Big Bang to Big Crunch. And it's a symbol that we use to represent, look, here's put yourself into perspective. This is the universe, and it's all Aum, and here's you, and your breath is just as significant as the entire length of the universe, because at the second also you can produce the same sound, but it's all symbolic, but that's part of the meaning behind it.
So I would also try to emulate Eric Sayo's caution here, because like when we were talking about frequency, like if you were talking about dominant frequency, for example, like from at least like from a spectral analysis point of view, that you're probably going to have like multiple frequencies that appear to be dominant, and that seems to be somehow the key feature of the CMB. Of course, like the whole thing about the Big Bang, the fact that the universe was compressed to like a very subatomic level structure, is merely sort of inference, but mostly the light, or at least like the light or the photons that we perceive as CMB, are the results of like the decoupling of photons right after, probably like around like 380,000 years after the Big Bang, presumably. So yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting concept, but I think we should probably could also address like some kind of moderation, not to be tied into like some kind of a bias when we're trying to explain the origins of the universe. But I do appreciate the input. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and just one final point of clarification. It's not just the sound at the start of the universe. It's not just the electromagnetic radiation, but it's just the concept that you can represent anything that's different about something with a wave. I use the word vibration and frequency, which I really shouldn't because they don't encompass the theory very well. But like, it's more like a waveform that represents everything, right? I agree. You can say no, you can't have a vibration that represents everything, but you could technically, mathematically represent everything, the entirety of existence and all that could exist with a single waveform. And that's sort of the theory that I've gone on enough about. Sorry guys for taking up so much time. I believe 118 was trying to speak.
Well, I think if you just analyze ohm itself, it wouldn't be just frequency. It would be a shape. It would be an envelope, it would have a shape. So maybe the echoes of the Big Bang or the echoes of creation are what shape physics.
So yeah, that leads to my question. What do we claim as the construct of that singularity? I mean, is it an infinite ball of mass, or if it's infinite and the singularity, somehow split a gamma ray, whatever, and has caused the Big Bang to happen, and we agree that the universe is forever aggressing and expanding, doesn't that mean that wave is still coming from that same singularity point in time?
So in terms of the expansion of the universe, there's kind of like a Disney version of how I think about the Big Bang. So let's just start with, hey, there was a Big Bang, and now energy density is going down as space-time expands or inflates. This quantum inflation kind of causes everything to distance itself from everything else. Eventually, as time goes to really, really long, or the infinite limit of time, you would eventually have zero energy for any space-time coordinate, thereby making every coordinate identical to every other one. You can't tell the difference between any two positions, and you can't tell the difference between any two moments in time, thereby all points in space, again, become one point equivalently. So it's a mathematical kind of elegance, at least from my level of understanding. There's some nuance there, because then what happens? Well, those last photons that are expanding in space-time, they get smeared out kind of like a cockroach or a spider would if you were to, kill it on the wall. That's what, many models seem to support, that the CMB is kind of like that last photon that got quantum inflated and thereby created a singularity, as you had a couplet form kind of energy and or normal matter and antimatter and all that. So it's kind of a nice symmetry. That's the simplest version, under 1 minute.
I just want to add, so I think of this as how things play together. So they're defined by their relationships with one another. So it's magnetism, it's gravity, it's light radiation, it's what's the other one? All of these differences create these dynamics, and the dynamics basically will create this orchestration. But that's how I think of it.
Or they're all the same thing. They're all one thing.
Yeah, and also I think we should probably, it's worth mentioning that, for the most part, Eric is right. The fact that we're seeing CMB is basically sort of smeared photons, because they have to travel longer distances, and we don't have exact center of the Big Bang. So we're technically living in the Big Bang. So in fact, the whole observable universe is considered to be the center of the Big Bang. But also the universe also has gone through different stages. The first one being that the inflation stage, where it was able to sort of expand faster than orders of magnitude faster than the speed of light. That's why we see homogeneity in the CMB. There's not much temperature difference there. But afterwards, there was this tussle between gravity and dark energy, trying to dictate as to what the universe is going to look like. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, if you do the math, if you actually solve the Einstein-Friedman equation, I think probably 1.4 billion years ago, that dark energy started to win in the universe right now is that it's accelerated its pace of expansion. So yeah, this is sort of like the brief history of the universe as we know it.
So is that how we can come to the conclusion that the universe is 13 point something billion years old, 14 billion years old, but extends over 92 billion light years because of the rate of the expansion?
That's correct. Because space itself is expanding. So the idea is that nothing can actually move faster than the speed of light in space, but the space itself is expanding. So that's why you have a really large, like like you mentioned, the radius of the observable universe is about like 43 billion light years. So the reason why that is so is because the space itself is expanding, and we can actually infer the age of the universe by looking at the CMB, and we can also use the cosmic ladder, which is another approach trying to look into distant objects or distant galaxy formations that may have created that actually their light is actually reaching us at their point of creation, if you will.
And eventually civilizations in the future will approach such a time where they will not even be able to see the origin of the universe itself. They will not be able to see the CMB. Like right now, if you travel 13 point something billion years to see the edge of the universe, by the time you get there, space-time will have expanded further than that. So there's also that kind of thing to keep in mind, that the travel time is something that we overlook because it's light years, which is already a mind fuck, at least in my intuition and how it works.
So yeah, let's talk about that for just a second, if you don't mind.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. Oh, sorry. Just wanted to convey small information based on that. So, to carry on what Eric was saying, CMB actually changes every 50,000 years. So, and not only distant people, like distant civilizations further into the future would see a different CMB, but also the structure of the CMB would change. I just wanted to mention that. Sorry for cutting you off on 18.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to talk about quantum physics real quick. And if it's true, and I may be totally off, so someone correct me if I'm wrong. Quantum physics tells us that the past, present, and future are all entangled. Could we? Is it possible to view that happening right now in the moment? And I say that kind of like how we perceive things on Earth. Like I'm in Alaska right now, and it's 8:22 p.m. I got family that lives in Oklahoma, and it's like 11:22 p.m. But I can see the time difference, but it's still the same moment. So you guys think that that could be possible in space as well, like the same moment occurring right now as we speak? Does that even make sense?
I mean, the time difference that we have is basically about convention. So we do have time zones that have been set, which kind of dictates as to like what time it is based on where we are on the globe. But I'm kind of I don't know.
But we're all experiencing the same moment, though. Like no matter what time.
Well, I don't know, because you use oscillators. You use oscillators to measure time, right? So if I don't have any oscillators and no way to keep track of time, how do I know time is happening? Right? So there's two models. There's a model where you assume that time is not unobservable. You can only measure the passing of time, thereby meaning you have to always have an oscillator. That's kind of the best model of quantum mechanics. Now, quantum gravity models say that time isn't observable and you can measure it, and it changes the nature of it from being something that is more of a artifact of the geometry to something that is fundamental to the fields themselves. It's a slight change, and that's kind of how I would describe that. So it really depends on which model you want to use. Personally, I think time is an illusion, a mathematical artifact, but that's kind of that puts me in the camp of Pythagoras.
I thought time is just used like a tape measure to measure the distance between fundamental objects. And when people talk about space time itself, well, does space age? I mean, to me, it always seems like the same space, that I enter into every morning that I wake up. It doesn't seem like that space has aged, but it seems like maybe the fundamental objects living in the space has shown aging progress.
Yeah. So the energy density has gone down, definitely. So the arrangement of the molecules or the atoms in the universe has changed, but the order or how much structure there is, that is always changing. In fact, what Abyss said is the parameters of space-time are always changing, and that is observable. So I don't think any 2 points in space-time are the same unless you go to the very, very far end of the universe's kind of lifetime, and you say, hey, hold on, are there any photons here? No photons, nothing else. So in principle, every moment or every space-time coordinate could be the origin of a new universe at some point in the future, or if you were to do an infinite regression, maybe it's many eons that have occurred. So it gets pretty wild because these bubbles only have time for a certain for a certain time in the universe's age. You have the normal perception of time, before and after which the concepts of time break down fundamentally.
And don't forget the time dilation and the twin paradox. And I think time might be the expansion of space. Therefore, the faster you travel through space, the less expansion you experience, so the less time you experience, and that would explain the twin paradox.
Yeah, I mean, basically, time is liable to change. I was going to point that out based on what Eric was saying. I guess, like, to address what 118 Elements was talking about, it's really hard to ascertain whether now has been experienced everywhere. So we can have the moment now, but time is heavily influenced by gravitational field, and that includes like the fact that we're zipping through, you know, our local star. We're also, the Earth is also orbiting around its own axis. So we have tremendous amount of speed, which definitely distorts our perception of time. And also there's the gravitational well that the Earth exerts that also affects time. So it's really hard to create like the sort of like the nowness, if you will, of time, and create this universal constant. I think one of the challenges that the Event Horizon telescope, which is basically a constellation of radio telescopes around the world, was that they were not able to. I mean, synchronizing the time was the biggest challenge. So I think that goes to show that probably time is not, sort of like this immutable parameter as we think it is.
Yeah, so if you have like more energy in a certain area, for example, if you have a probe or a satellite, and my satellite has more battery charge than your satellite, that may curve the space-time, thereby affecting your ability to synchronize clocks. In fact, we do that on satellites now because they're traveling something like 7 kilometers a second and require a relativity correction, which is kind of mind-blowing. So next time you're taking GPS and you're like, Google, directions to blah, 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 realize that that's thanks to Einstein in part.
I just wanted to give the stage to Slajan. Slajan, sorry for you've been waiting quite a long time, so please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I'm really pleased to actually participate in the conversation, and there's definitely things that is going to resonate. And I'd like just to actually speak as electroherbalist, someone who practically used the frequency in daily life. So I'm just going to explain that, not just as well to demonstrate.
Slajan, can you get closer to the mic because we can't hear you very well? You're a little bit low.
Is it not better?
If you're using a headset, probably not a good idea. But yeah, it sounds better now.
Okay, I apologize. So I would like to speak about the modulation and mirroring of the frequency, as well about the scalar value and about the zero energy, because that's exactly the practical the frequency application on the daily basis that I'm doing. So let's say that the generalization about electrocalibrism is about the frequency range. And it's one of the things that can be related to the topic is that Nikola Tesla didn't use the pills as his way to treat his, let's say, the illness. There's actually a way that you can harmonize that. So let's put in the perspective, and I like as well what the Rajashi actually introduced that frequency range about the basic 5 energies. So there's a potential. One of the things that doesn't happen is because the Tesla was talking about modulating. His frequency should never actually breach something that is not is present. So what does it mean? It means that the radio should, and any type of communication should not go beyond 8,000 hertz. Why? Because that's actually modulation setup for everything else. When you have this modulation part, then you can actually modulate, and you can actually have the source that is going to be in the flow, and as well is going to be used in the continuous without having the electricity or any source of energy to be exhausted. So let it put in the practical terms how it looks like. When there's that modulation part is integrated, then you have the mirroring. I'm just going to put in the very practical terms. One of the things that I'm doing is the ice swimming. So what is going to happen actually? It's going to happen that the body, the mind is going to resonate in the default frequency state. When you have, and I'm applying that in the treatment as well. So what is going to happen? There's a process of harmonizing the frequency on the level on the exterior frequency part. Let's say when you go in the surrounding, there's a frequency of waves, of wind, there's sun, all the things that is going to affect. But what is the most important is that there's a cell intelligence. The cell intelligence is the part of the human entity that has the scalar value. I'm going to put in the right perspective about. I'm going to speak about transformation as well. Transformator, the chromosome or the chromatin has the has the two different actually parts. One is actually have the one that can be extended, that you can pull till the moon, and the second that is one is the shorter one. So there's a potential to create the scalar value to respond, but it's not going to be manifested. Why is that important? Because by having that state of the frequency that in the default state, and it's the most efficient. It actually has the scalar value. You can create something that is unmanifested. So let's explain that one. And this is exactly how the healing process is working. So it's the part when the cell is able to mirror itself. When it's going to mirror. It's going to mirror itself in the state. Let's say one of the things that is actually done in medicine is that when you have the serious injuries, then you're going to put in the state of coma. So you don't want to impede any resonance in the body. And this is exactly, let's say, happening during the ice swimming. It's going to modulate, it's going to change the default frequency state of the body and the mind, and the cells is going to express its mirroring power. So, and this is one of the things why the science doesn't work. Because if you're going to amplify without modulating the frequency, there's no mirroring of the cells. And why is actually important? Because every time when you create that experience, and this is the real treatment life experience, when you're going to mirror the cells, then that cells is going to replicate, they're going to harmonize, and there's going to be that part of the expression, and as well mirroring, duplicating, then the harmony is going to happen. And what is going to happen? That, let's say, the bad frequency inside you, that can be your emotion, it can be your health, it can be your state of being, is going to just modulate in its default value. So the experience of Big Bang that you talk about is the experience about unmanifested. It's experience going in non-creation part. And this is exactly how the chromosome is working as well. you have the potential scalar potential that is unexpressed, that is present, that is one you have actually the reason to do it. There's a huge, let's say, in that like empty space that you were talking about, there's a huge potential of the scalar value. So you don't care what is going to happen. You don't care that motion part. Then you have the state of an uncreated and unmanifested that is highly applicable in daily life as well, in your life as well. So it's going to mirror. It's going to mirror the cells. It's going to be modulating the frequency, and it's going to have that unmanifested part of creation. So that's some of the notion that I would like to maybe bring in discussion, because I think that Rajarshi at least created a space that I can speak differently, but the glossary is the same. How do you actually apply the frequency? By mirroring and modulating. I don't know if there's any comment, but I'm here actually to respond if it's required. And I'm going to have in the next like 20 minutes my early morning swimming session. So just in order to mirror and modulate my own frequency. I'm yielding mic to you.
Does anyone have any comments? Thank you. I don't know if I understood everything. And who's it? Abyss was talking about the frequencies, different materials mirroring each other. I just don't know if there's any correlation there. Abyss, do you have any comments?
I think that might have been Rajershi's point.
Oh, that's right. Rajershi.
He might be sleeping. I think there is intelligibility there for the possibility of the mirroring image, especially if you take a look at the human biology and the way our blood cells and things like that can mirror image each other. So I think the potential is there. I also think that the Earth itself and everything in it is intelligibility. If I say that a rock has intelligibility but not intelligence, the formation of the chemical components that make the life source itself, and then something that people hardly ever talk about that I think is very underrated is the Higgs boson or the Higgs field, which holds everything together to make it a very fundamental life that we live. But that's just my point of view of that perception.
Well, Sajid, thank you for your comments. Chris, you came out on the stage as well. Do you have any comments or questions?
Well, I was just going to say, it sounded like the assertion is that there's a modulating frequency that promotes some kind of, I don't know, like cellular maybe entanglement or something that allows for there to be some, link between cells, and I don't know. That's just where I was kind of following along.
Yeah, can I just actually extend explanation about?
Could you play louder, please?
Yeah, yes, of course. So I would like just to extend explanation about the cell's intelligence. Okay, so that's not something that is like unmanifested. So I told you, when you have a serious problem, an injury, you know that you need actually to put as less energy and as less frequency in your body. Okay, so you want actually to unmanifest yourself. So the best way that actually you do any type of surgery is going back in that induced coma state. And why is actually important? Because by doing that, it's going to be a default reset of your frequency frequency part. So and it's very applicable because let's say, and this is something that what I'm trying to say is by having that part of the frequency range that is not manifested, not created, exactly like the state of the chromosome is built in, then you built this scalar value. So why is that? Because the cell is going to mirror itself by being harmonized. It's by having that intelligence part, that information part that is going to be duplicated. And this is exactly what is happening by applying, let's say, the surgery, but also applying the, let's say, the treatment part that is coming from that, from that application. Why is it relevant? Because that's the another realm how information is working. Yeah, because you have that action-reaction motion, but let's say if you would like to have that non-intrusive, and so the reply by the body that is not going to be like facting, or at least is going to be in the most efficient way, except so you're going to do the least from the most, like the nature. So one of the problem is by amplifying the frequency all around you, because then Tesla never spoke about that one. He never would go beyond the frequency already inside the cycle that we have, like Schumann frequency. So do whatever you want to play, but don't go beyond, let's say, go beyond 782, because that's exactly the value of your blood. So there's this something that was Rajashi was talking about that has that universal trace and can be actually traced back. But it's not only having that default value about the frequency. It's as well about how you modulate, but you can uncreate yourself. Okay, so you can really uncreate yourself. Once you have that experience, then you get scalar value. It doesn't mean that you express you want to actually have some tangible result about, because the life is actually about you're about uncreated. And that's real about. You can, let's say, I'm just going to give you a practical example as well. Then you do the ice swimming. What is going to happen? You're going to modulate your frequency inside. Let's say 90% of energy is actually used and consumed by your brain. So you don't want that. You're going to be unhappy completely. So you would like to modulate and harmonize the rest of the body and mind. So how are you going to do that? So there's two things that they call that hunter grease. You're not going to use that unless you do three things. You're going to be exposed to the concentration camp. You're not going to eat like the next 4 years. The second one, you're going to be the hunter that doesn't eat but just hunt. And the second one, doing the ice swimming. And what is going to happen? Your frequency range inside yourself is going to come to default part. So you're going to, at one state, you're going to mirror, you're going to have that experience of mirroring yourselves. So you're going to modulate, you're going to have that wide range of exactly what the Rajashi was talking about energy outside, inside. Then it doesn't have to be explained, because it's actually something that you can just not only meditate, but you can put yourself, your activity, your state is in unmanifested part. So the modulation experience and harmonization experience about the frequency is real around you. So the problem is because we don't have the source of energy. The science didn't even start yet, because the source of energy is actually just is limited. Why is limited? Because there's no modulation of the frequency. So when you modulate, it doesn't matter what you're actually going to push through. Are you going to push the information, energy, Wi-Fi, whatever? But the Tesla never actually have intention to go with the radio waves beyond 8,000 hertz, 8,000 kilohertz, 8,000 hertz, exactly. So what does it mean? You actually play with the frequency around you, and the space is not actually is not empty space. There's no empty. There's actually just those traces of the of that cell mirroring experience that you can have inside yourself. So when you're going to experience that by yourself, then you're going to extend your scientific research as well. Because I'm telling you, the mirroring, modulation, scalar value, and zero energy unmanifested is real. Okay, so I'm yielding the mic to you.
Okay, Sajjan, thanks for sharing your thoughts. Chris, you came up onto the stage. Did you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I think we should be wrapping up soon because it's getting late. And yeah, I would like to thank everybody for your shares today. This is already part 3, and I never thought we would extend far to this hour because I thought we had spread ourselves too thinly. But there's so much to talk about Tesla. So I would like to invite everyone to be with us tomorrow at 5 p.m. Pacific time. We have a guest from MIT. He is an author of a book. He is from MIT Management and also Economics. He will talk about game theory and irrational behavior and about a book that will be published, authored by him soon. And after that, at about 7:15 p.m. PDT, we will have 2 astrobiologists, postdocs from Caltech, who will try to discuss with us about their hypothesis and having an answer to the Fermi paradox, asking why aliens haven't visited us yet. So they just released their paper on that, peer-reviewed paper on that. And so, yeah, tomorrow will be 2 exciting rooms back to back. And so, yeah, we look forward to those rooms. So these are only all the rooms that I will announce for now, because it will be followed in less than 24 hours after by also 2 exciting rooms with very special guests. So yeah, with that, I would like to thank everyone. I don't know if people on stage would have something to say. I would like to thank Lara for staying up so late today for us. I really, really thank you from the bottom of my heart, Lara. And those people here on stage, Jake, Joe, Carla, Shladjan, and of course we called Darcel to help us close the room today. So anyway, I pass the mic to Lara for now if she has something to say as a parting word. I know that you're having a grand time for preparing for your trip, maybe for after a long while. So yeah, I pass the mic to you if you have something to say. If not, I will pass the mic to Darcel.
Nothing to say, Cecile. Thanks for the room. And you can pass it to Darcel. Thanks, everyone, for coming.
All right. Hi. Great room, Cecile and Laura. I really enjoyed it. As always, I learned a lot. Tesla is something else. He is something else. All right, we're going to start our countdown with lucky number 7 tonight. Is everybody ready?
Ready.
Ready.
Here we go. 7.
7.
Route 66.
6.
6.
Joe 55.
Joe 5.
4.
4.
33 and a third.
3.
2 seconds.
2.
Cecile, Laura, Jake, Carla, Joe, Stanton, and 118. You're all number 1. Go ahead and call it out.
118. 1. Yes. Don't forget to come tomorrow. Good night, everybody.
Yes, good night.
Thanks, Darcel. Night.
Have good dreams, everyone.
Thanks. Night.